Hello, everyone, and now it is time for me to review the final Big Brother season throughout this large rewatch that I went over throughout the last year in Big Brother 25. So, my experience with this season is that something felt off to me about it from the very beginning. I just really couldn't get into the cast that much. I couldn't really get into the gameplay too much, despite there being two sides initially, and I really didn't like that they reverted back to the very long seasons with their 100 days, though obviously we know that they did that due to the strike, and it just wasn't connecting for me. And I kind of felt like that throughout the entire season, but during that time I decided to focus on my rewatch, and by the time I was doing this season, or watching the season live, I was getting through a lot of the BB season, so I was focusing more on that instead of the season. But now that a few months have passed and there's some distance with the season, I came into this rewatch with a lot of fresh eyes and with more attention put on the season, and I definitely view it a bit better than I did live, but I would be lying if I say that I liked the season. There are so many stupid production choices that were made throughout the season that made it a lot worse, and I honestly don't think the casting is the main issue of the season, though I don't think it's one of the better casts. Them extending it to 100 days, adding so many twists so they can justify those 100 days, the very long pre-jury portion of the season, and a bunch of other twists that just made everything even worse. Anyways, I am happy that this is concluding because I spent a year watching BB10 and BBUS, and I believe by the time I started watching BBUS, it was late May, early June, so it took me 9 months to finish BBUS. But in general, this season is definitely not one of the better ones, and let's just get right to it. So I found week 1 to be kind of boring and kind of a slow start to the season. I would think that two sides being formed would have caused for a more interesting dynamic this week, but it really didn't. Though I also think that with the way they set up day one, with there automatically being four nominees, and that being set up due to the competitions, and two of them being saved, causing the other two to be nominated, definitely caused for less interesting things to happen on a gameplay point of view in the week. Anyways, Blue is a brand strategist and talks about growing up to fit in as an Asian American, but now she does everything to stand out, where there's also some showman's talk, which is very foreshadowing. Red is a countryman who has a family, and he was in the military. Jared is an exterminator who coaches in his free time and is Cerie's son, but there's also some showman's talk. Though he had a girlfriend, I think, at the time of the season. Nicole is a political consultant who is a newlywed and is a fan of the show, so she isn't going to lay low. That aged very poorly. Matt is a professional swimmer who wants to be in the Olympics, and he is deaf, partaking a lot in the Deaf Olympics. Izzy is a professional flute player and talks about her queer experience as well as being a superfan. Jag is a Sikh man and talked about people not underestimating him, or them they did underestimate him, I believe, and how he was bullied a lot as a child, but now he embraces who he is and has three majors. Riley is a bartender and talks about having a lot of misconceptions about her, and she wants to enjoy life due to her father passing away young and unexpectedly. And of course, she hints a lot about having a showmance, which never really happens for her. Luke is an extremely fit guy who's a nerd and a digital artist, and he seems very Brett like. And that would be the only coverage he really gets in the season. Felicia is a real estate agent and started it at 60 and talks about being in the Air Force at 22, where she had a big presence despite being a small person and continued getting degrees in her middle age, and she watched the show since its inception. Hissam is a doctor by day and a cabaret slash burlesque performer by night, and is now a confident, gay, Arab, Muslim man who is confident in himself. Corey is a student and does well at public speaking events, and as he has done at many tournaments, is a lot more physical than he looks, and he's a black belt in martial arts and is a super fan as well as the younger brother of Zach from Survivor 42. Bowie Jing is a criminal trial attorney by day and is a DJ by night, and she migrated from Australia and is also good at tennis. America is a receptionist whose family recently migrated from Mexico and didn't have much growing up, and is a huge fan of the show. Cameron is a space cowboy because he likes tie-dye, is a hippie, and was also in the military. And they literally casted Cameron and Red for one another. And he is a single father. Kirsten is a molecular biologist and a swimwear startup founder. Did a lot of cancer research and has a lot of friends, despite being smart and very athletic. Jared, Kirsten, Felicia, and Corey are now automatically nominated due to how the premiere competitions were set up. And we are also told and shown that Suri is the 17th and final house guest of the season. I really did not like this twist when it took place in the season because it felt like they're trying to set up a BB19 Paul or a BB11 Jesse situation, and I just wasn't having it at the time. So Izzy knows that Jared is Suri's son since she follows Suri on social media, and she pretty much tells Jared that she has him and he has her, so they have an arrangement. Drake and Riley are immediately getting close, and it's the same with Cameron and Red. Suri is told by Izzy and Jared that Izzy knows, so she's going to work with them. Matt is crushing on Riley hard, and it's so hilarious watching this, knowing that he pretty much ghosted her, and the two do not like one another at this current moment that I'm recording this. And Kirsten is crushing on Matt. Nicole likes Hisham as a person, and Suri gives Jared advice on how to not be sloppy, since he told Kirsten in front of everyone that he will speak to her later. And this is just the start of Jared's sloppy gameplay. A fake five called the Bro Treasures with Kirsten, Riley, Luke, Matt, and Jared is formed, and Kirsten tries getting close with Suri, mentioning that she doesn't want to go with the old people getting voted off first, and she has the same conversation with Felicia. Jared and Suri speak, and he mentions that Kirsten is untrustworthy, since she already formed an alliance and is doing everything she can to throw him under the bus. I do remember Kirsten doing a lot in the first 2 days in the season, and I don't think they covered a lot of it on the actual episodes. Suri is telling Felicia this, and now they don't trust her, since she comes off as sneaky. Riley wins HOH. Apparently, Cameron, Bowie, Jane, Jake, and America threw the competition, and due to how the Date 1 competition was set up, she didn't have to nominate anyone, and now she just has to save 2 of the 4 nominees, where the other 2 will be the official nominees. Felicia throws Kirsten under the bus to Riley to save herself, and Riley also talks to Jared about Kirsten needing to be a problem. And I remember Kirsten was really trashing Riley at this point in time, which was just a very stupid move, and I think it's because she was jealous of Riley and Matt's relationship, if I remember that correctly from the feeds. Anyways, all this goes around the house, and Corey also speaks to Riley to get her to save him. Riley takes Jared and Corey off the block, leaving Kirsten and Felicia as nominees. Kirsten feels betrayed since she thought that the alliance with Riley was real, and I also think she genuinely wanted to work with the younger side of the house. The younger house guests are all getting very close, and it's getting noticeable to people like Felicia, and Jag and Riley also solidify the final 2, and they are rallying the troops, where Blue, Matt, and Cameron name their alliance. Jag talks about being Sikh and how the first Sikh church is in Canada, and it makes sense since there are many more South Asians in Canada than the US, and I believe South Asians are the biggest minority group in Canada, if I remember correctly. And Hisham talks about being Egyptian during 9/11, which was very hard for him, and Jag talking about also dealing with that as well during the time, since people thought that he was Muslim growing up due to 9/11. I also remember Joseph kind of talking about 9/11 and how it affected him when he was very young last season on the feeds, where apparently he had to go to private school because he's getting picked on so much. So it's nice having this conversation, or conversations like this, on the air. Felicia immediately talks about the Scary Room Alliance, the 5 listed above, to Nicole, Bowie Jane, Izzy, and Suri, where they all form the Bye Bye Bitches Alliance. Corey, America, and Jared are added to the 5 Alliance, where it's now 8, but they are so clearly on the low end of the alliance, which made all of them feel uncomfortable. Jared immediately tells his mother about the alliance, though I think he should have held on to it a bit, but she tells him to stop talking too much, which is a repeated thing with Jared. Hisam is told by Suri and Izzy about the 8% alliance since they are not included in it and that side of the house are getting really close. But they're also telling Hisam this because they don't want him to use the veto, though I think he was starting to somewhat get closer to that side anyways. Hisam wins the veto, and we have the typical conversation with him and Kirsten, with the nominee wanting the veto winner to take them out the block, but of course Hisam does not use the veto. Kirsten speaks to America, where the latter realizes that it would be a good idea for them to keep Kirsten, since Felicia is close to the other side of the house. And this is actually a good idea, but it's the start of America having these ideas and generally not being able to pull them off, even if they are the right idea. The Bye Bye Bitches decide to add Hisam, Red, and Mikol to form their own alliance. Sorry, not Mikol, because she's already part of the Bye Bye Bitches alliance. And I believe the last. I think it might have just been that 7 actually. Also, since Hisam is tired of younger people in general booting the older people first every single season, and Suri is fine with this, since Hisam is coming off as the leader of the group. So, this alliance is called the Professor's Alliance. Kirsten is feeling very alone, and she's speaking to Luke about the game, where he admits that he doesn't know what is actually happening. Luke talks about what Kirsten said to him about. He's saying this to Corey, Hisam, and Jared, where this somehow ends up with him saying the N word and laughs, while Corey and Hisam immediately leave awkwardly, and Jared states that he feels more comfortable with it than the non black people. And I don't know if this is actually genuine or not from Jared's end. Luke is expelled from the game, and this only happened because social media lit their asses up about it, since many people said the N word in the past, but a rule in BB All Stars 2 stated that anyone who said slurs will be booted, but this rule is very hard to enforce, since they still have to follow a schedule. If they're just expelling people for a bunch of problematic behavior, they can't follow the schedule. And I believe this rule came about because it was alleged that Memphis said a slur on the feeds, and they reviewed the tapes and they said no, and that's when that rule was created. So Corey states what happened and who was in the room, and Hisam says he didn't hear it. And his face during the conversation with Luke says he did hear it, and he apparently laid into Corey after this when the feeds were blocked. And Jared tries downplaying this. I really don't have much to say about Luke in general. From what I remember on the feeds and on the episodes, he really didn't have any alliance, and neither side really wanted him. Where he came off as very aloof, and it's not surprising that he ended up saying a slur, and he had no regrets about it. So I guess expelling him was the right move. Though, like I mentioned earlier, them having to keep up with this rule is going to be something that they're not going to be able to enforce in general, which we will see later on in the season. But in general, Luke didn't offer anything to the cast or the show on a personality standpoint or a gameplay standpoint, so I am more than fine with him going here. Moving on. So Red ends up naming all of Riley's alliance members to her face. One, I don't know why he did this, since it's obviously going to cause some tension and make it clear that he is not on her side, and causing him to potentially be targeted. And Riley confirms it. I have no idea why she did this, knowing that Red is not in her alliance. And Riley ends up doing the same thing with Izzy when she speaks to her, confirming her allies to Izzy, which is not only just very isolating, but she's showing her cards very quickly. And I think she had HOitis or HOH-itis during this week, though she really didn't have to do much of anything. But it's just this continuous rambling of the mouth about her allies is why she ends up in the predicament that she ends up in next week. Izzy talks to Suri, who gets nervous about Izzy being way too much and hanging around her all the time. Riley gets paranoid to her alliance about people naming their alliance, and America tries to pitch to keep Kirsten, but it was never anything serious, though they should have done it. And Riley isn't realizing that people are naming her alliances to her, or her alliance to her, because she and all of them are hanging out way too much, and they were isolating themselves. Kirsten is evicted in a unanimous 13-0 vote. Maybe Kirsten could have offered something personality-wise to the season, but in general she just seemed very aloof and didn't really know what was happening in the house. Obviously, she overplayed during the first few days, mainly the first 2 days, because she was automatically nominated due to the stupid twist that ended up happening with the day one competitions, where I don't know if she would have been targeted had it just been a normal week. But after being nominated, she was kind of just left to her own devices, and people kind of just avoided talking to her. So I don't know how much she would have contributed gameplay wise. And honestly, she was pretty much the house pretty much moved on from her, and she was kind of just like a ghost after like day two. So I don't have much to say about her gameplay ways outside of handling the first few days very badly. And she wasn't dynamic because she was just too aloof and out of it to really get involved in much of anything. So yeah, I don't think week two is any better or any less notable or more notable than the first week. Guess it's also kind of just a bleh week in general word. Not a whole lot was going on, at least based on what I remember from the feed and what was happening on the episodes. So Hassam wins HOH. Koi mentions that he threw it, and of course the younger alliance is worried because one of them will go home. Matt is attempting to flirt with Riley, though she is so not interested, and I end up with them talking about Hassam being HOH, and we learn that she told Hassam last week that she is targeting him, which is why Hassam wants to target her, but he's debating about whether to nominate Cameron or Matt beside her. Why in the hell would she tell him this? I'm assuming this was when she had those conversations with the likes of Izzy and Red, and around that point in time where she told him this, which really isn't smart, especially as she was still at going HOH. You don't tell someone so early on that you are outright targeting them. So Hassam speaks to Matt, and he mentions that people already have a name for his 8-person alliance, and Hassam cuts Matt off in the conversation, and Hassam has a tendency to just cut people off. And he also mentions that Riley told everyone that she is targeting him. So, Matt is definitely in contention to be nominated. Jared has the option to choose someone to be safe from nominations, and he is told by Hassam that Matt, Cameron, and Riley are in danger, and he is told by Sari to save Jeg, though Riley is begging Jared to save her. But she obviously feels a way when he kind of leaves her hanging out to dry. Hassam tells Izzy and Sari that his 3 potential nominees are Riley, Cameron, and Matt, and he tells Cameron that he is probably going to nominate him with Riley. So Cameron is now willing to throw the handful alliance under the bus to him and everyone else, which he does, and it really is kind of the start of Cameron's long drawn out downfall in the game, and an example of his untrustworthiness. Hassam nominates Cameron and Riley for eviction. Hassam ends up telling Riley that she is the one person and the only person that mentioned a name, which is why he is targeting her, and this just annoys her even more, since he's claiming to be honorable with integrity, but he clearly isn't. And I believe a lot of other people are mentioning Hassam's name at this point, but I think she was the only one who said it to him. And he's kind of blaming all the gameplay on her, though there's 14 other people who have their own agendas and who are working to make those agendas happen. But he'll continue this throughout the next few days. Hassam tells Matt that Riley is the target, and it would be best if he leaves things alone, though Matt has every intention to save Riley if he wins the veto. None of this ends up mattering, since Hassam won the veto, and this is his 3rd competition win in a row, which is just very dumb. And despite most of the veto picks being Riley's allies, who intended on taking her off the block. And honestly, I have to say this is pretty impressive that all of Riley's allies who were in the competition were willing to take her off the block, even though they knew that one of them would most likely be the replacement nominee and the potential new target. Apparently, Hassam made a really bad veto speech that was extremely edited down on the actual episode, but it did rub the house the wrong way. But they do show him mentioning that she divided the house, and after she's gone, people can discover who they really want to work with, which is just a really awful look, since he's blaming everything on her pertaining the dynamics of the house, and he's insinuating that he, as well as other people, didn't want to work with the people that they were kind of just grouped up with, which brings up a bunch of issues. The Handful Alliance know that they have 6 votes, but they need one more to get ready to stay and for Cameron to go. And we see Izzy and Suri talk about Hassam's speech. Serene mentions that Riley did promise herself and Felicia safety, so she does want to protect Riley, but turning on Hassan and the Alliance is a lot. Cameron tells Jared that he thinks Felicia is related to Denzel Washington, and Jag is campaigning to Suri to keep Riley and to blindside Cameron, and Suri is heavily considering it, since she would be sitting pretty on both sides. Hassan tells Alice that they shouldn't create new alliances, but they should spread their wings a bit to protect the professor's alliance. He starts to ask and answer his own questions, and he cuts off people like Bowie, Jane, and Nicole a few times where he's just digging his own grave. He also mentions to keep an eye on Jared, which is obviously pissing Suri off, and this shows an element of how the parental-child relationship affected things. I think this is also one of the reasons why Riley's game went downhill so quickly, since Jared ended up selling her out to Suri when he didn't need to do that. Izzy and Suri talk about how they need to backdoor Hassan next week, since this might be their only chance, and he will win the veto if he is nominated. And Felicia is fine with this when she enters the room. And we all know that this is the start of the Bye Bye Bitches / the Professor Alliance's downfall, but we'll get more to that next week. Hassan is trying to make inroads with other people on the other side, like America, where he mentions that people were on sides that they didn't really want to be on, and he states that he kind of didn't want to be on his side and wanted to be on Riley's side. America is rubbed the wrong way about this, as many other people would be, and she reports all of this to Corey, who tells this to Izzy and Suri. And I believe Corey was in an alliance with them at this point, specifically with Izzy, Jared, and Suri, if I remember correctly, but they didn't show it on these early episodes. The duo are thinking about keeping Riley, and they tell McCall everything about what they were told and what is happening, and she's stating how the math ain't mathing. Riley is evicted in a unanimous 12-0 vote. Riley is a somewhat weird and interesting case, since on a strategic level she was actually very poor as she was just too loose-lipped with information. She made it clear who was where pertaining the sides of the house. She told people way too much about her game, but at the same time she kind of had a really solid social game where obviously she had like 6 ride or die people throughout her entire time in the season, and a lot of people on the other side really did like her, to the point where they were heavily considering keeping her. And she was decent enough in competitions from what I remember. So I do see an avenue for her where she could have potential to do better in other seasons. But at the same time, she made a lot of poor mistakes, and she was pretty bad. As a personality, maybe she could have been messy had she stayed longer, but I don't even know if that's the case either. So as a character, she didn't really bring too much to the table. So I'm kind of just and slightly mixed on her on both elements. Yet again, week 3 is another week where I wasn't really interested in anything that was going on. There really wasn't any drama, though we had this huge betrayal that was happening, and it didn't really lead to anything really interesting happening, or a bunch of changing dynamics either. It was kind of just bleh, like the last 2 weeks. So a bunch of people are crying over Riley's eviction, especially Matt, since he wanted a showmance that never happened in or out of the house. Felicia wins HOH, Corey and Suri through the competition apparently, and most of the Bye Bye Bitches are happy to send Hassan home, where the handful alliance, mainly Blue and Jag, are worried this week. Suri and Izzy plan to get Felicia to nominate Cameron and either Jag or Blue as the other nominee. Anyways, we waste a bunch of time on snot/slime coming out of fake noses, and it's just really gross. And a lot of this tacky humor is all over the season that production's clearly trying to implement throughout their editing and their competitions. So, Hassan tells Felicia that he wants Jake out, and he doesn't even let her speak in the conversation, and Felicia is annoyed that he is forcing things, even though he's attempting to be subtle, and he also mentions that he wants Matt nominated as a pawn next to him. This is a good idea strategically, but clearly they're not thinking strategically, and he doesn't have grace with how he handles things like this, or when he's trying to sell his pitch. We see the start of Jared and Blue's showmance, though he had a girlfriend apparently during the season, and his mother is in the house as well. And I think this is the first interracial showmance that doesn't involve a white person, so it's very unique in that element. Felicia asks tells Jake that Hassam is getting backdoored, but he's going to be nominated as a pawn, and of course he's not happy with it. Matt talks about being deaf and how he doesn't know sign language, and it's a really nice scene. And he mentions that he's good in conversations with a few people as he could just read their lips, but struggles in group conversations since he can't read a bunch of people's lips at once. Felicia tells Cameron that he is going to be a pawn to backdoor Hassam. Felicia nominates Cameron and Jake for eviction. Hassam is not aware that people want him gone and thinks that he ran his HOH very well and smoothly, but literally everyone but Red, and I think Bowie Jane, knows that Hassam is the backdoor target, because Red is loyal to the professors. And this is another mistake that the Bye Bye Bitches made, with isolating and pushing Red away. We waste a scene of Corey dressing like a woman, and Izzy and Felicia are telling Hassam that he doesn't need to play in the veto, since Jag is going home. There is a fun scene of Mikol's rent in the storage room, where she did many of them on the feeds. Cameron tells his best bud Red that Hassam is getting backdoored this week, and he speaks to Felicia on the plan, but she tries to reflect at first, but she gets him to agree with it. Red tells Cameron that the Professor's Alliance, or he tells him about the Professor's Alliance, and Cameron thinks that he will take him some spot in the Alliance, which never happens because they cannot stand him. Cerie sees Jared getting into a showmance with Blue, and she is not liking it. I remember that she hated Blue during the early portion of the season, and she lays into Jared about it in the storage room. About it. Jag wins the veto, and the plan to backdoor Hassam is still in place and effect. Hassam thinks that Matt should go up, and based on how the rest of the season went, they definitely should have done this. And he pitches this to Felicia and Izzy, but it's falling on deaf ears. Jack takes himself off the block, and Felicia names Hassam the replacement nominee. Hassam is very shocked and hurt that Felicia nominated him, since she was one of his closest people. She speaks to him about how she felt like she would never get this move again, which is stupid because if the other side just won HOH, they would have taken him out. And she says that many people told her that he doesn't think much of her, and even the others that they are working with. Hassam claims that he never said that, and he wanted all the older people to work together, and he knows that it is a stupid game move, which he says in the diary room, and they would later state later on in the season that it was a stupid move that they regret. Hassam speaks to Izzy, who admits that she and Cerie knew about it, and Izzy mentions that she is not a leftover and will not play someone's game, and he called America the Endurance Queen and told her that he was forced to work with them. Izzy does a lot of mansplaining, is very condescending, and generally just likes to victimize herself without actually taking accountability for anything or seeing anything throughout another person's lens, which will eventually be her downfall. And it's stupid for her to even do this, since he made a final two with her, and she needed a backup final two, especially since the fields are obviously going to protect one another over her, and she didn't make Felicia, Bori, or Mikol a priority for her in that element. Hassam does apologize and claims that he was just trying to protect him, but he is going to make amends. He realizes that he needs to apologize to his allies, and he starts with his campaign, where he says that he was getting close to other people to make sure that they were all safe, and Felicia mentions that he has a day and a half to change people's minds. He continues to apologize to Izzy, and said that he was the closest to her, and he continues his speech to Cerie, where he mentions that he sees all of them as family. Felicia, Izzy, and Cerie speak about the potential to keep Hassam, where Felicia is not the most sure, since he could get revenge on her. They pull Hassam into the room and assure them of his loyalty. They realize that they need Corey, America, Jared, and McCall. I don't know why they don't speak to Bowie Jane about this, since she is in an alliance with them, but it is another mistake of theirs, as they automatically grouped her in with Red and Cameron. Hassam was close to staying, but Corey pretty much shut it down, and this is kind of Hassam's fault, since he and Corey didn't have a good relationship, and it was all Hassam's fault, since Corey tried his very best to build a relationship with Hassam until it was clear that Hassam wanted nothing to do with him, and Jared also wasn't the most thrilled about keeping Hassam. Hassam is evicted in a unanimous 11-0 vote. I forgot to mention that Jared wasn't keen on keeping Hassam because he thought that he would be the comp beast that would carry the alliance to the end. And while he did win some competitions, it's just a stupid mindset. And he also got rid of a shield for himself. Sam was someone who was very entertaining on this season, as he had such a cadence of the way he spoke and the way he carried himself and the way he moved along. And I don't think he was bad strategically at all, but I think his huge issue was that his social game was just not good whatsoever. And while he had the right ideas, he didn't know how to implement them, and he made his allies feel very insecure and doubtful of him, while not making any effort to really make solid relationships with anyone on the other side. And of course, he was very good in competitions, but was way too good at competitions, where he won a bunch of them when he didn't need to win them, and he was already a larger man in stature, so it really just did him no harm. At the same time, he is one of those gay guys who just likes to say bitch to and about a lot of women, especially on the feeds, which I didn't like. But in general, Hassan was a very unique house guest, and I think the season would have been more interesting had he lasted longer. I feel like week 4 is where the season actually starts getting interesting for the first time, as there are a lot of changing dynamics and the tension is rising a lot. And you definitely feel there's a change in atmosphere at around this point in the season. So we have the pressure cooker competition, which isn't as fun to watch here, but Cameron wins HOH, where Matt and America throw this, and we learn a bunch of alliances that Sari, Izzy, and Felicia are in. They, Jared, Corey, America, and Nicole are in the For Real Alliance, which is the real alliance according to Suri. And the Seven Deadly Sins Alliance consists of those three, Jared, Jag, Matt, and Blue, and they are also in another alliance called Legend 25, which includes those three, Matt, Nicole, Boy Jane, Cameron, and Red, and she's okay with the Seven Deadly Sins Alliance, but she doesn't care about the Legend 25 Alliance, as it's just a way to placate Cameron, Boy Jane, and Red. So in most of these alliances, you have Felicia, Izzy, Suri, Jared, Mikal, and Matt in most of them. And it's really interesting how Matt kind of infiltrated himself into the Suri group without really much effort at all. And he's the only one from his group who was able to do this. We see more of America and Corey's showmans, which I never cared about, but seeing how people reacted to them online on both ends, whether it's really loving them or really hating them, was always and still is very ridiculous to me. Red reports to Cameron that Izzy was not happy that he won, and America tells Corey about the deal she made with Cameron. Jack knows that he is in trouble, and Cameron pretty much tells him that he is going up. Cameron is thinking of nominating Izzy since he knows that he and Red are in the bottom of her list pertaining their alliance, but Red talks him out of it, and Red's just painfully naive to everything that's going on, even though Cameron had the right instincts this time. Cameron nominates Blue and Jag for eviction. Jared and Blue are sad about her being nominated and ranting about how much they do not like Cameron. Because America included Corey in a deal with Cameron, he mentions that his brother was the first boot on Survivor, and literally no one cares. Even the edit makes fun of it. Cameron and Red talk about the supposed love triangle with Felicia, Izzy, and Suri, and they may eventually have to take a shot, though Cameron is potentially talking about backdooring Izzy. Jared decides to give hints to Blue about how his mother is in the house, but he mainly hints that it is Felicia, though she is leaning towards Suri. And I believe that he eventually tells her that it's Suri, but I don't recall it being on the actual edit pertaining to episodes. Cameron is trying to recruit Matt just in case the alliance breaks up, and Matt sells everything out to Suri, which is something that he did for most of the season. He just read out a lot of information and used it to get in good with a lot of people. There is a segment about missing condoms, and they want to throw some at America and Corey, where I believe they're in the shower or something like that. But it was really Jared and Blue having sex. Red wins the veto, and of course he's going to do whatever Cameron wants. Blue and Jag are sad since they know it is over for them together in the house. Red does not use the veto. Everyone agrees to send Jag home this week, and Blue knows that she is a pawn at this point. Jag mentions that he trusts in them and will do whatever for the team. So the Felicia, Izzy, and Siri group are considering keeping Jag, since he will go after Red and Cameron, who are making other alliances. Suri tells Jared that Blue might go home and he's not taking this well at all, as she wants him to vote out Blue, which is kind of just ridiculous on Suri's part, and Jared is feeling a way that the Alliance did not tell him about this plan beforehand. Jared is not going to just do whatever people want him to do, even if it is his own mother telling him that or what to do, since he wants to make a name for himself on his own pertaining to the show and reality TV. There is a new twist where people can compete to stop the eviction, and it's clear that this was implemented to drag the season even longer and even slower due to the 100-day time span and strike going on. Matt wins the power and he tells Suri that he won the power, so now she realizes that Jag can't stay without her getting any blood on her hands. Now she is fine with Matt being in the final three with her, which is very ironic since he's the one that ends up sending her out of the game. Before the eviction, Matt told Jag about winning the power, how he can't tell anyone and only Suri knows. We learn that Suri told Jared about Matt winning the power and saving Jag. I have no idea why she told Jared this at this point. And Jared ends up telling Jag that he knows, which is one of the reasons why Jag eventually loses trust with Suri, since it's obvious that Suri would be the one who would tell Jared, since he was told by Matt that only Suri knows. Jag lets Suri know that Jared knows, and she of course confronts her son about it. Jared then speaks to Jag about him telling her, and they're all freaking out, and Jared's acting like he was wronged by Jag. Jag is evicted in a unanimous 10-0 vote, but he is prevented from leaving the house due to Matt using the twist on him. Jag 1.0 was kind of just there. It was clear that he was trying to play a Minuteman slash Detonator's game with how he formed the big alliance and literally formed the final two first, then the final 5 second, and then the final 8 third, and did it in a very transparent way where the hierarchy was known from the beginning, and he didn't really do a good job of integrating with the other side of the house or even hiding his alliance. So it wasn't a shocker that once his alliance lost power, he was one of the first targets. I did appreciate hearing his stories about his upbringing, his culture and heritage and ethnicity and all that. But as a game player, it seemed like he had some potential at this point, but he wasn't adaptable whatsoever, and his eviction was very fitting. But of course, this is far from the last of him, and we'll discuss how I feel about Jag 2.0 in this season very soon, or just throughout the video. So I found week 5 to be a pretty good week since it just continued the momentum of the past week and it felt like there are actually stakes or there are actually real stakes at this point in time, which I didn't feel like was the case for the first few weeks of the season. Jared wins HOH, and this is fine since everyone wants Cameron and Red nominated. Cameron and Red know that they are probably going up, and Jared already has it in his mind, with Izzy and Suri of course pushing it, that the two men are going up. Jag and Blue are starting to pick things up, and he's not pleased with the house lying to him, where he was voted out unanimously, and he will never get over this throughout the rest of the season. The two start to compare notes on Suri, and Blue knows that Jared is more loyal to Suri than Blue, so her number one at this point is Jag. America talks to Corey about how she wants to nominate Suri, Izzy, and Felicia, and is tired of just waiting and pretending to be okay with them, since they don't even talk to her, but Corey tells her to not be reckless. And I believe this is the case because he actually has decent relationships with them, but starts suffering around here as he starts to kind of just tell too much information and just shows how smart he is and blatantly talking about the endgame competitions and his plans for the endgame to a lot of people in the house. Cameron speaks to Jared and he knows that they are in trouble, so he kind of throws Red under the bus so they can not have that perception of the two of them being close, but this just ends up rubbing Jared the wrong way. He pretty much tells Red everything that Cameron told him, which pisses Red off. Jared nominates Red and Cameron for eviction. Jag is still insistent on wanting to work with the 7 deadly sins instead of making more connections in the house, and Red is not over Cameron stabbing him in the back. Cameron has the obligatory talk with Jared, and he is hiding his allegiance to Red, so he's going to fight to keep Red if he is not on the block. We learn that Corey and Jared have a final 2, where he tells Jared everything, and Jared considers Corey his number 4, where Suri and Izzy are his number 2 and number 3. Jared thinks that America throws competitions, and Corey is trying his best to protect her as he wants her around as long as possible. Jared rants to Corey about America potentially throwing the veto competition, and if she does throw it, he'll put her ass up on the block so fast. Corey rants to Jared, and things get very argumentative between the two of them. So, this is the start of their deteriorating relationship. Corey tells America that she really needs to try in the competition since she's in danger of being nominated. This was around the time where Jared called America the R word, and fans were pushing really hard for him to get expelled. But they didn't expel him because, like I mentioned earlier, they have a schedule to follow, and if they're just expelling people randomly, then that would be a production problem since they need a certain amount of people in the house for a certain period of time. But this also kind of just shows the hypocrisy of the producers when it comes to handling people with slurs and whether to expel all of them or not. Anyways, Cameron wins the veto, and an alternative plan needs to be created, as no one is happy that he won the veto. And the Bye Bye Bitches were kind of suggesting to America to nominate herself, and she ends up ranting to Jared, where he rants about her throwing the pressure competition, where she mentions that it makes no sense, though she did throw it at the last minute because she made a deal with Cameron to protect herself and Corey. He mentions that he heard that she's throwing around nominating Suri, Felicia, and Izzy, and she's clearly realizing that Corey is telling him stuff and throwing her under the bus. So this is kind of like what Kyle did to Alyssa in last season and what Polly did to Zakia in BB18. We have some sappy country soap opera mess between Cameron and Red, as the latter pretty much breaks their friendship with him, though Cameron is very confused. The Bye Bye Bitches speak to Red, and they realize that Jag should go at this point, since he will never trust the house, since they all voted him out 10-0, and Suri realizes that Jag won't trust her due to the mess with Jared, so she's trying to clean up the mess that she and Jared kind of started. Suri pushes her son to send home Jag, since it will cause Matt to have one of them as his number one instead. Jag meets up with the 7 deadly sins, and Blue offers Jag up as a pawn, which is dumb on her part, and he ends up accepting it, which is dumb on his part. Cameron takes himself off the block, and Jag is named the replacement nominee by Jared. And honestly, they should have just taken Jag out at this point, but I'm probably getting too ahead of myself around here. Both Red and Jag think that they are safe, since they're expecting their alliances to keep them safe. Jared is trying to calm Jag down, since he is the target at this point. If the bromance with Jared and Cameron is... Not Jared and Cameron, sorry. Red and Cameron is really dead at this point. There's no point in booting Red, since he was always the intended pawn, and after some Air America and Corey Schumann stuff, Legend 25 meet up, which is the real alliance now, probably in Suri's mind at this point, to get everyone to stay together. Though Nicole and Felicia feel weirdly about this meeting, since they are actually afraid of Cameron and Red reuniting very quickly if they're in the house next week, which would make this week null and void. The house celebrates Red's birthday, and he speaks to Jared about how he still doesn't understand the Cameron situation when he's going to want to have a conversation with Cameron after this Thursday. He asks for reassurance about what Cameron said to Jared, who sticks with his narrative. Jared speaks to Izzy and Felicia that he's worried about Red reuniting with Cameron again, and Felicia reports all this back to Suri. If I remember this correctly from the feeds, Felicia was actually trying to keep Red in the house, which put her in hot water with a lot of people in the house, and Red didn't believe her when she was telling him that he was in danger. But this was another stupid move by the Bye Bye Bitches, since Red was always someone who was loyal to them, and Jag would prove to be a problem later on. Red is evicted in an 8-2 vote. I feel like when it's all said and done, Red is going to be the most forgettable person from the season. He really wasn't interesting as a character and didn't really offer anything strategically or personality-wise throughout the season, and there wasn't really any drama with him either, so he was kind of just there. It was clear that he joined the show so he could brand himself and so he could gain more TikTok followers, but he really didn't play the game. He was way too naive to the point of what was happening in the house, to the point where he talked Cameron off of some pretty decent reads. And it really says a lot that while he was loyal to his alliance, they never liked or really wanted him in the alliance, and he ended up booted in this position here. There's really nothing else I have to say about Red. Week 6 is a great week and easily the peak of the season. There are a lot of changing dynamics, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of interesting and intricate gameplay that's happening, and this week is a week where you really feel like it's Big Brother in a positive way. Cameron wins HOH to the chagrin of literally everyone but Boy Jane, and seeing all of their faces as their reaction to this is just hilarious. Cameron and Boy Jane are really pissed off about being blindsided over the last vote, and it leads to a tense confrontation where Izzy, Felicia, and Suri mention that she could still have them, and Boy Jane states that it's clear that she is not with them since they pushed her with Cameron, though they claim that it's her fault. Felicia pretty much tells Boy Jane to get it together and to not take it personally since everyone has to go home, since people withhold things in their house and she does it too. They are clearly gaslighting Bowie Jane throughout the conversation, though they mention that she can be the person to rat information from Cameron. But I will give Bowie Jane props in the fact that she realized that people aren't with her, and she moved on to find other allies, where a lot of people don't do that in Big Brother. So it was good that she moved on at this point. Matt is annoyed that Felicia kicked him out of the room, which continues the downfall of the Bye Bye Bitches, and the group of women make amends with Cameron, as they claim that Red sold out their final two, and he went on a campaign to target Cameron next week. Cameron isn't buying what the women are saying, and he speaks to Boy Jane about how they're sick of them, where they mention that those women turned on their allies twice, referring to Hassam and Red. Which is true. Jack talks about his parents migrating from Punjab, India, and being the only Sikh man in this area, where a bunch of people spat on and played with his turban rudely as a child, which is just very unfortunate. Felicia mentions that she has a final two with Sari and makes a deal with Jared to the final two, since she respects him a lot. Jared ends up telling Sari all of this, and it rubs them both the wrong way. Though Jared mentions that he would feel this way even if Sari wasn't his mother, though I do think that obviously plays into a factor here. We do get a flashback montage of Felicia being too loose with information, and people are just tired of it. Blue speaks to Cameron, and he tells her that she is going up as a pawn. He doesn't tell anyone about his plans, which isn't a good move on a strategic point of view. And Blue claims in the diary room that she's fake crying, but I honestly just do not believe her. Cameron and Jag make a truce with one another, though Cameron tells the latter that he is going on the block, and Jag really does not believe Cameron in general. We have a segment of Matt and Jag's flirtatious bromance, and Cameron has his talks with people, where he does not tell anyone anything about putting up Blue and Jag. And this really isn't a good idea pertaining building social connections. Sorry, he's only telling people that he's putting up Blue and Jag, though Cameron shockingly nominates Izzy and Felicia for eviction, and they use a pie thing during the nomination ceremony, which I found very neat. Felicia doesn't believe Cameron's rationale for his nominations, and Felicia throws Sari and Izzy under the bus, claiming that they were the ones who said an hour before the eviction that Red was a liability, though Felicia is still lying at this point. Izzy and Cameron's conversation is so awkward since neither one of them ever liked one another, and throughout the conversation, Izzy realizes that Sari will probably be the replacement nominee. America and Corey are glad that the move was made, since it was the first real move of the season. Sari knows that she is in danger from Cameron's conversations with her, and Izzy tells her that she would not use the veto if she wins, so Sari wouldn't go up. This is so stupid as hell, and it shows that Izzy wasn't playing for herself. Cameron pretty much threatens Jag in their conversation, despite them having a deal to protect one another now, and he names his alliance with Matt. Jag is the person I'm referring to, as they call themselves the Minutemen, after the Hitmen in Big Brother 16, and they become the final two, so yay. Cameron seems to trust Jared, though the latter is only bullshitting him, as Cameron genuinely thinks that he was the pawn last week. He is so not aware, especially when it comes to the social element stuff. Izzy talks about how she really wants to be good at Big Brother, and Suri tells her that she's better than she gives herself credit for, where Izzy really delves into her insecurities, and it's a really somber scene. They are really genuine, and it turned into them bonding about being insecure, and Suri felt like this before she did Survivor Panama, and she never made a connection like this in any of her shows. Jared wins the veto, and now he will use this to get full information about Cameron's plan. And Felicia is expecting Jerry to take her down, while Izzy wants him to keep the nominations the same. Suri and Felicia are stuck together for a kayak punishment, and this will be important on how the week turns out, since Suri is isolated with the supposed target for 2 days, where things started to change. Cameron and Jared speak, and he states that he would put up Suri next to Izzy, and they all thought that Suri is the target, but Cameron really is targeting Izzy. This causes for Jared to not use the veto. Suri is stuck in a rut and wants the house to keep Izzy, but she can't really campaign for it. Corey reveals that he was in an alliance with Jared and Izzy from the beginning, and with Suri and Matt being hanger-ons. So Izzy is staying in the house. At this point, at least. America wants to vote Izzy out, and he tells her that the votes are not there, though it makes no sense because Izzy is the better game player than Felicia, which I can see America's point. America speaks to Cameron and tells him that Felicia is going home, and mentions that he was the target last week during Jared's HOH, also mentioning that no one celebrated him winning HOH. He now realizes that Red turned against him due to Jared, and that Jared is working really closely to Izzy. America speaks to Matt about the game, and they agree to work together, though Matt really doesn't trust America, and honestly he doesn't like her, where he continuously bashed her throughout the season. Matt tells her about the power, and she immediately tells Corey, though he doesn't want her to tell, and she tells Corey that Suri also told Matt that she played in the competition, which makes Corey feel away since she didn't tell him, and he realizes that he's at the bottom of the alliance. Corey speaks to Jake and mentions that he has known about the Seven Deadly Sins alliance for weeks, as Izzy told him, and he also outs the For Real alliance, so Jake is now done with the alliance. They speak to America about how they are 3 votes and they need 2 more votes to send Izzy home. Corey speaks to Bory Jane and Suri, ratting out information in general. He then speaks to McCall, who is closer to Felicia and also sees Izzy as the better player. Corey speaks to Matt about everything that happened and that he's evicting Izzy, where Meg and Jag are in agreement. We get to the day of the eviction, and Suri notices that Corey and Matt are very off, since they won't make eye contact with her, and they see them kind of avoiding Izzy as well, so it's clear to her that Izzy is in trouble. Jared asks Matt what happened, and he lies, stating that Jag said that he wants to keep Felicia, since he believes Matt won't tell the truth otherwise. So Jared is the one lying at this point. Matt mentions that Izzy is probably going home, and Jared pulls Suri and Corey in the room to make sure that the votes are the same. After Jared and Suri leaves, Matt tells Corey that Jag is an effing liar, since he believes Jared at this point. Corey mentions that they have to stick with the vote, and they can take out Jake after Jared. Jared tells or asks Felicia if Matt is voting with her or voting to keep her, and she said that's what Matt told her. So he asks Matt about it again, and he mentions that the Seven Deadly Sins alliance is a fake alliance, and Matt mentions the For Real alliance. Corey enters the room and leads to a huge fight between Corey and Jared. Corey mentions that Jared is his closest ally, or was his closest ally, and he continues lying to him, and Jared deflects about the For Real alliance, where Jared states that it is a fake alliance, though Corey says he was never told that it was fake. Both of them are getting very heated and very loud, and Matt also mentions that he thought the Seven Deadly Sins alliance was real. Both of them are yelling at the top of their lungs, though Jared tells him to stop lying and to not yell at him, though Jared was literally just yelling at him. Corey brings Jag back into the room and asks him if he told Jared about the vote, and Jag denies it, since he didn't do it, though Jared claims he never said that, and that Matt misunderstood. It's really not a good look to tell a deaf person that he misunderstood or misheard, even though I don't think Jared had bad intentions when he said that. Suri goes back into the room to try to clear things up, and mentions that she does not want to be in 4 to 5 alliances, and Corey mentions that she, as well as Felicia, Jared, and Izzy, are in all these alliances, and she's benefiting from it, which is very true. Izzy is evicted in an 8-1 vote. Honestly, Izzy was a frustrating person to watch, even though she had her entertaining moments here and there. She really got sanctimonious throughout a lot of points in the season, which just really rubbed me the wrong way, and she really couldn't see throughout anyone else's perspective. And the fact that she was so sanctimonious and honestly wasn't very good socially, she was always a target for people who weren't in her alliance, and she never really saw that. And from how she handled her exit interviews, she really doesn't know how to self reflect and to take accountability for some of her mistakes, so I don't even think she's good in that element. In general, she was playing for Suri and Jared to win because she was such a huge super fan of Suri and really took out any sort of agency that she herself could have had throughout the game. And while her rants and meltdowns were kind of funny, it was just frustrating seeing someone play to not win for themselves. But I can't lie and act like Izzy didn't contribute anything to the season, despite her having a smaller than expected edit. I think week 7 is the last good or solid week of the season, and that says a lot since this is the mid portion of this extremely long season. And we also had one of the best double evictions ever, though it ultimately went to moot due to the week after this. So Jared wins HOH, and most of the house is very disappointed since he was the next target. Corey and America are extremely worried, and Jared is talking to his mother about nominating the showmans, but he does want Cameron backdoored. Cameron tries to make amends with Jared this week, and mentions his daughter and his military service as a way to ensure some loyalty, and that Cameron can give loyalty as a result of it. Jared nominates Corey and America for eviction. Jared tells America and most of the house that Cameron is getting backdoored this week. The couple speak to Cameron in hopes that he will save one of them off the block if he wins the veto, and Jag tells Blue that Jared is in another alliance that does not include her, since he is in the For Real alliance, where he mentions her proximity to Jared is hurting her in the game. Blue ends up mentioning this to Jared, who denies it, and in his mind, that alliance was fake, or he's stating this now to kind of justify all the mess he got himself into. Since he cares for Blue more than most of the others, no. So this is his mentality. He gets very defensive, and they both get very argumentative, but she does not get why he's treating her like this, since she knows his secret, and she's just asking a simple question. But it also can come off like he's acting like this due to guilt. Nicole and Felicia solidify their final two, especially since Suri and Jared make it clear that they are closer to Izzy than the two of them, and all the shocks Felicia, since they wanted her gone this last week and she didn't even know about it until very recently. Blue, Matt, and Jag talk about how there are two pairs in the house, meaning America and Corey and Jared and Suri, so they need to balance things out, and Blue doesn't want to cut Jared too soon, since him being around is good for his game. But they don't like this, since Jared being around is bad for their game, since he will target them. Jag tells Matt that he wants to work with America and Corey, and he wants Jared backdoored, but Matt is closer to Suri, though they both want Jared gone. So Matt isn't that inclined to work with Corey and America compared to Jag. Suri tells Jared to put her up if Cameron wins the veto, and uses it on a nominee. And it's very clear that Suri lost some motivation for the game once Izzy got booted, and she's been in the house at this point longer than any Survivor season she has done. So in general, she's just very burnt out, and she mainly did the season just so her son could be set up and so he could have his own reality TV career. Kind of like the Calafiore brothers, with Paulie getting on the show and having his own reality TV career due to Cody and his proximity to Cody. Does that make sense? Jag wins the veto, and Cameron makes his pitch to Jared, Jag, and Matt that they will all be gone next after he leaves, since they all win competitions, mentioning that the smartest person, Corey, needs to go. Jag vetoes Corey off the block, and Cameron is named the replacement nominee. Corey still wants to go after Jag next week, despite the veto move being used to save him, and Suri and Nicole get close once again, realizing that they need to target the other group, Jag, Matt, Corey, America, and Blue. Suri, Nicole, and Felicia start getting close and making up around here. Matt tells Blue that Jared is going next, and she mentions that she can't do that, since it makes no sense for her game, and this weirds Matt out, since he knows that Jared will target him and Jag soon, which she denies, though I kind of talked about this a few minutes ago. Cameron is evicted in a unanimous 8-0 vote. So it is clear that they gave Cameron a very flattering edit, and it almost made me forget about how weird and creepy he was on the feed just by rewatching this season over the last few days. At times, it seemed like Cameron had a grasp of the game and other people's motivations, but he always thought that he knew the best, and he never really went out of his way to actually find additional information. So while he had a decent read here and there, he would more often than not get blinded by his own arrogance and one-way thinking, and his social game was abysmal, as he only really bonded with Red throughout the season and actively didn't like dealing with most of the women, as well as his weird way of flirting with people like America and Riley, which just rubbed them the wrong way. He did bring some chaos to the season with his unpredictability and when he was in power, but in general, he just wasn't the most pleasant person to deal with, and a part of him really rubs me the wrong way, despite what he offered to the season. But clearly, this isn't the last of him. Corey ends up winning HOH and nominates Jared and Blue for eviction, despite Blue's pleas that she would not veto Jared if she won the veto. Matt wins the veto, and of course he doesn't use it, despite Blue pleading to get off the blog, and Jared expecting it to be used, if I remember correctly. Oh yes, because at this point he's still under the expectation that Matt was working with Suri and would do anything she says, if I remember correctly. Blue tells Jared that she knew that he was a target, and he's pretty shocked that she didn't tell him the entire week, though he should have known that he was a target based on that huge fight he had with Corey a week ago and how the flip against Izzy happened because of his actions. Jared campaigns really hard to Bowie Jane, and Felicia also wants to get her leg back from last week. And Suri realizes that Nicole, Felicia, and Bowie Jane are not voting for him to stay. Jared is evicted in a 6-1 vote. Jared is someone who was very unlikable on the feed this season, as he would say some of the most offensive and dumb statements throughout his entire time in the season, and he just kind of had his gross moments at times, especially with how he spoke to people. But he caused a lot of drama throughout the season, and I do appreciate that element of it, especially his huge fight with Corey, which was only gameplay focused and it didn't involve any personal attacks. At the same time, I was kind of annoyed with the twist of him and his mother, since while people like Polly, Tiffany, and Alyssa were cast due to nepotism, they never had their relative cast with them on the exact same season. But he blew that privilege and ended up going pre-jury, where he should have made it very far in the season, despite all of that, and because he had so many benefits throughout the season. I don't know. I don't like him, especially on the feeds, but I do appreciate what he brought to the season. And the season does get kind of boring after he leaves, so I don't really know. Like a part of me wants to give him his props, but a part of me is just annoyed as well. Okay, the season completely falls off the cliff to never recover at this point. And week 8 is very similar to, I believe, week 7 in Big Brother 2, where there's no HOH competition, no eviction, and nothing happening throughout that entire week. But the difference is, this cast is a lot more boring than the Big Brother 2 cast, so meaning the Big Brother 2 cast, made it work where this cast didn't. Though it did have that great fight with the Fields and Felicia, but that was only 3 people that were involved in a cast of 10 at this point, and it was very early on in the week, where it was really just as a result of the aftermath of the double. Cameron and Jared returned to the house due to the stupid zombie week twist, which was just a way for them to drag the season to 100 days, ruining an otherwise good double eviction. One of them will return to the house as a house guest by the end of the week, and it will be determined by competition. Jared and Felicia get into it since he feels a way about her voting him out, and she feels justified since he and Suri screwed her over the prior week. Suri gets into it because she's defending her son, though obviously Felicia doesn't know that yet, and she said, "The group!" decided to vote her out, and the 2 older women get into it and they're both yelling at the top of their lungs. I've never heard Suri get so loud and volatile like this before, and it was kind of shocking and very interesting to watch at the same time as well, because she's usually cool, calm, and collected. But we saw a different side to Suri, and it was great. Everyone is overhearing the three of them getting into it, and Jared exposes Felicia breaking up her final two with Suri, which Felicia denies, and Suri mentions this as to why she doesn't trust Felicia. Matt tries to justify his move to Suri and mentions that she was not the target, but everyone wanted Jared gone since she would have been gone had he used the veto. Suri recognizes that she has a soft spot for Matt, and she always keeps someone too long where they need to go. This is even more ironic since she leaves under his HOH later on in the season. Corey, Matt, Jag, and America realize that they need Cameron to come back since Jared will reunite the other side. And this looks like black people versus non-black people, though I don't think that was the intention, but I remember there's a lot of commentary about this online at the time. Jared is salty that Blue knew that he was the target and said nothing, but she mentions that he withheld information from her as well, and they all knew that he was a target, but things are still a bit icy between them. Cameron wins the 3 rounds and decides that he will play in the do or die competition on Thursday, which will determine whether he comes back or not. Jared pretty much knows that it's game over for him, and Felicia, as well as Nicole, who is there, make up with the fields, since they all need one another in the game. Jag and Matt get close to Cameron, since they know that they can use him, and Cameron offers that they can work with him for next week, and they can all work from there. The three of them are strong competitors, so of course they bond over that. Blue joins the room and they make a foursome where they mention that it's pretty much everyone that was in their original alliance or their top 5, but Riley. Cameron tries to make a brigade alliance situation, though Matt doesn't know what a brigade is, and he clearly isn't a fan of the show. And he also said that he would have been 5 when it happened, though he was a teenager at the time, at least 15. We see Corey and America making out in the bathroom, and Jag and Felicia walk in seeing them. Corey tries to kiss up to McCall and Felicia as a backup, despite his main alliance being himself, America, Jag, and Matt. They've tried doing this with McCall for weeks on the feet, from what I remember, but it never really went anywhere. But McCall and Felicia are more open about it here. Matt sees Corey and Felicia talking, and he sees Corey covering his mouth, so it's clearly a game conversation. The 4 of them meet and make an agreement with this. Pretty much Matt, Jag, and Blue see through the showmance, and Blue specifically throws America under the bus, since she wants them closer to her than America. Blue gets very lost into this and her America obsession and dislike over the next few weeks. Honestly, for the rest of the time she's in the season. Cameron plays the competition and wins his spot back into the house while Jared is gone for good. I cannot believe that we are still in the pre-jury at week 9 of this extremely long season. People who have gone home on this week in prior seasons, so like Helen, Zach, Becky, Polly, Mark, Fessel, Annalise, all those people were early to mid jurors, and at this point we're still dealing with the last pre-juror. And even in the last few seasons in this era, I believe the Terrence and Michael went home during this week. Same with Alyssa and Claire, if I remember. Yes, Alyssa and Claire, they went home during this week. And Tyler went home on this week in All Stars 2, so it's just ridiculous. Anyways, pertaining the actual week in question, compared to all the other weeks in the second half of the season, it's decent, as there are some entertaining moments here and there, but it's clear that the steamroll is set in place and nothing's going to stop it, and a lot of the people that are left just aren't dynamic whatsoever. So, this is the last drop, a very, very small drop of life that's in the season. So Cameron wins HOH, and Felicia, Suri, and Nicole are not happy at all. Matt and Jake are trying to navigate all their separate alliances with America and Corey, Blue, and Cameron, but they want to speak to Cameron to influence things. We have a scene of Corey talking to Suri about Survivor and all the fandom information, though Suri really doesn't give an F about it at all, since she wants to get revenge on him for booting her son. The trio of men named their alliance the Fugitives, and Cameron mentioned that Corey is his biggest threat, but Felicia is the person who is anti-Cameron, so he doesn't want her in jury. We have a segment of Nicole's cleaning habits as she cleans the house a lot since they ignored her on the edit for weeks and she's growing up, so they're showing all this now. Corey speaks to Cameron to make sure that he is safe, and Cameron does not see why Corey feels safe. And some people mention that he was jealous of Corey's relationship with America on the feeds. And this was around the time where Corey got really passive and started feeling really safe. And Cameron speaks to Blue, who throws Corey under the bus since she wants to split him from Matt and Jake. Felicia calls Cameron out for not speaking game with her the entire season, and he replies that they planned things without him, and the conversation does not go well. And honestly, they're both right in this instance, though she throws Suri under the bus as well. And this is something that Felicia would do throughout the second half of the season. Cameron is not giving Nicole much information, but she is picking up the fact that she is going on the block as a pawn. Cameron nominates Felicia and McCall for eviction. Corey is fine that his fake alliance with McCall and Felicia is up since his real alliance is safe. Suri is just blending under the radar, and Felicia doesn't like Cameron's nominations, especially his rationale for it, since his game is crap because he doesn't know how to connect with people, and she didn't tell a single lie. Felicia speaks to Cameron, and he outright tells her that he doesn't want her in the jury house, and she's offended by it, and is also confused about McCall being nominated beside her. Felicia throws Corey under the bus since he and America approached her and McCall about a Final Four, but he is claiming that they approached him about it, which is a lie. Cameron wins the veto, and of course he has no reason to use it. There is a push to backdoor Corey, and the latter tells Blue that he wants to go after Cameron next week, which she does tell Cameron. Cameron speaks to Matt and Jag about everything he was told by Blue, and he's thinking about vetoing Felicia to nominate Corey, and Matt is seemingly fine with the idea right now. Jag is not good with the idea, since it is too early for himself and Matt to reveal their cards. Despite all of this, Cameron doesn't use the veto. Felicia throws Corey and America, especially Corey, under the bus during her speech, and this causes for America to try and fight with Felicia about the Final Fours coming to her. And emphasis on try, because Felicia ate her up. Felicia calls America and Corey liars, says that Corey is sneaking and lying throughout the season, where America has been riding his coattails throughout the season. He wants to have the conversation privately, but of course Felicia shoots it down, since they can lie in private conversations, but they can't do it and get away with it publicly. Suri isn't getting involved with the vote and is letting the nominees fight for themselves, and Corey is still wrestled about Blue trying to get him nominated, and he only heard it from Cameron, so clearly Matt and Jag are hiding things from him. Corey speaks about this to Matt, who pretty much denies it, since it wasn't anything serious, though Corey doesn't really believe it, and is pretending to do so. Felicia speaks to Jag about how America and Corey need to be handled, and she will be fine with doing it herself. Matt, Jag, and Bowie Jane talk about how McCall is the better competitor, and Felicia is blatantly going after Corey and America, but they don't want to do it behind the showman's back, so they have to convince them that it is a good idea to keep her, though they are intentionally doing this to sabotage Corey and America's game. In a conversation with the showmans, Corey on his own states that it would be a good idea to keep Felicia, though America doesn't want to keep her in the house. McCall is evicted in a unanimous 7-0 vote and tries to call out Corey and America during the eviction, but it's just awkward and doesn't add or amount to anything. McCall is frustrating because you can see why casting decided to put her on this show. Based on how she carries herself in interviews and on social media and even in real life, she has this very bubbly, bright, witty personality, but we didn't see any of that really when she was in the house, and while she's very smart and she has a great political career, she didn't really use that in the house as she intentionally laid too under the radar to the point where even her allies distrusted her at points because she wasn't getting involved in the strategy talk or the conversations and she was just way too passive, and the other side wanted to work with her but she made it clear that she had no interest in them, so they eventually stopped trying to work with her and then they voted her out because she was very unreadable. While she's definitely a cool person that I would probably be friends with in real life, on the season she was definitely a huge dud. Week 10 sucks. There's really no way of getting around it. And the fact that the jury portion of the season is starting so late just really feels like there's no stakes and there's no meat to the potatoes and everything's already set in stone before a jury started. And they're clearly just trying to rush to finish it. So Bori Jane wins HOH and the main alliance are going to blame the McCall flip on Corey, where it wasn't even in his best interest to do such. Suri and Felicia are wondering what Bori Jane is going to do, since they haven't been good with her for the last 5 or so weeks, since the red vote. Bori Jane is working closely with the guys, while also having a solid enough relationship with America and Corey, and Jag and Matt are planning on taking Bori Jane to the end. Blue and Suri are missing Jared, and they are starting to grow closer to one another, where they both want to nominate Corey and America. Matt pretty much does clean up for Blue regarding Cameron, while claiming Cameron is trying to get Blue and Corey against one another. Corey is just way too gullible in general. Corey wants Cameron and Blue nominated, and we see Jake teaching some of the other house guests how to tie a turban, which is very nice. Blue asks Felicia and Suri if they spoke to Bori Jane yet, and they tell her no, but they all want Corey gone. Felicia and Suri talk to Matt and Jag about how everyone is doing Corey's dirty work, hoping that the two guys can persuade her to pitch Corey and America to be on the blog. Even Cameron wants Corey to go home, which he is ranting to Matt about. Felicia talks about how she went to the Air Force because she was in an abusive relationship and it was a way out, where she speaks about how the man unfortunately broke her tooth, but she had to lie about it to her family since domestic abuse really wasn't talked about back in the day and there weren't alternatives or support systems or support groups via the government that supported women in this situation. It's very touching that she was so open to talk about this with everyone in the house. Matt and Jake do not want Corey and America gone, since they are good shields for the two of them, and they know that the showman doesn't have the power without them, and now want Cameron out. Bori Jane is talking about how she does not want to be manipulated into making a move. That doesn't age well, and she wants one of Suri or Felicia gone, as she does not want Cameron gone for now, especially since she's one of the closest people that he has, and it really doesn't benefit her at all. Corey and America are pushing for Blue and Cameron to go up, and Blue, Suri, and Felicia are pushing for the shamans to go up. Bori Jane nominates Suri and Felicia for eviction. Bori Jane wants Suri to go home this week, but her allies have other plans, and we learn that Jack's ideal final five is himself, Matt, Bori Jane, Suri, and Felicia, which does end up happening, which also just shows how linear everything is from this point onwards. Cameron regrets not getting Corey out last week, and Bori Jane tells Cameron that she wants the nominations to stay the same, though both Cameron and Corey are pitching for the other to be nominated via a backdoor, or replacement nominee. Cameron is thinking that McCall is right about Bori Jane, Corey, and America working together, and Jack reports this to Bori Jane to get her to turn on Cameron. Jack won the veto, and is planning on using the veto to backdoor Cameron. Cameron continues to push the Fugitives Alliance to stay together with Jake and Matt after he got a bad feeling after his conversation with Bori Jane, but he can tell from their answers that he is going home. Jake takes Felicia off the blog, and Bori Jane nominates Cameron as a replacement nominee. Suri feels comfortable and safe since people have forgotten about her in the house over the last few weeks, and she has improved in her position over the last few weeks. Cameron sells out Matt and Jag, from what I remember, and tells Blue that she was being set up to go after Corey, and she completely ignores everything about her two closest allies, though she should have listened, but Blue tends to ignore good advice that is given to her because she thinks she knows it all, and she thinks she's much better at the game than she really is. He continues campaigning to Corey, but Corey knows that Brenning, Matt, and Jake is not smart, especially over Cameron, even if he does not trust the two of them entirely. And this is just another example of Corey being very passive. Matt is getting tired of people whispering around him, since it's the rudest thing to do with a deaf person. But in the house, he can't really play the game without whispers, so he has a down moment. Honestly, his parents really should have taught him sign language, since he's isolated from a community of people who go through the same thing he does and has the same disabilities that he does, and he doesn't have another way to communicate, so it's just really sad the situation he was in. He is cheered up by Cameron and Felicia, and honestly, I think this happened a few weeks ago, but they edited it in now because there's really no content or anything happening in the week. Anyways, we see Corey speaking to Jag about targeting Blue next week, but Jag isn't giving Corey any answers, and Corey is realizing that they aren't meddling things or mediating things between himself and Blue, since it benefits them for the two of them to be at odds. Cameron spills Jag's game to Sari, and she realizes that Matt and Jag are in the best position in the house, with everyone else going after one another. Sari tells Blue about what she was told, and they realize that Corey might not be the biggest priority right now. Jag talks to Sari about Corey and America throwing competitions, and it is time to get one of them and Blue out. Corey even approaches Sari about getting Matt and Jag out next week, so people want her as a number. Cameron is evicted in a unanimous 6-0 vote. There's really nothing different from Cameron 2.0 to Cameron 1.0. So he came back, he won HOH, so he was safe, and then he was taken out at the next opportunity possible, and he was used by Matt and Jag essentially. And he was really kind of blind to what was going on for the most part. He wasn't really that chaotic this time around, and he was just kind of the lamb being led to the slaughter. Don't really have anything else to say about him, so I'm just going to move on. Week 11 sucks, and they handle the invisible HOH extremely poorly, compared to how it was in BB23 and in the last few BB10 seasons. Anyways, it is time for the invisible HOH, and Corey wants his allies to mention who wins HOH, while Suri and Felicia feel more safe that the HOH will be anonymous, so people will leave them alone and make a big move. Jag wins the invisible HOH, and Felicia/Suri predict that one of Jag, Matt, or Corey won it. We waste a bunch of screen time seeing people speculate who it is, which is one of the main reasons why I don't like the invisible HOH twist that has been on these recent seasons. And the other side is speculating that it is Blue, since she's acting off and is alone. Jag tells Matt that he is the invisible HOH and is allowed to play next week. Remember 2 seasons ago where Claire got the invisible HOH but had to throw the next HOH? This was only 2 years ago, but this was one of the many dumb production choices that were made this season, and it actively contributed into the season being even worse. America and Corey think that they're in the final 4 with Matt and Jag, where Jag tells them that he is the invisible HOH, though it's odd that he didn't mention it the day beforehand, which one of them mentioned. Jag secretly nominates Felicia and Blue for eviction. Jag denies to Blue that he is the secret HOH, but she knows that it is him, and Felicia knows that one of Jag or Corey won it as well, and she is leaning towards Jag based on his reaction, and I believe on the feed, Suri knew it was Jag because of how he reacted to things as well, as he was just very silent, nonchalant, and he would actively avoid eye contact. Corey is happy that Jag is getting the blood on Blue, or the blood of Blue, on his hands, and he's planning on putting up the 2 men next week. America tries to build trust with Blue, but what ends up happening is that Blue doesn't trust America, even though America tells her that Jag is the secret HOH and is targeting her this week. But Blue doesn't believe it at all, since Corey has been after her for weeks, though the 2 things easily could be mutually true. And Matt and Jag have been her closest allies from the beginning. Blue should have listened. There are 2 vetoes this week, and Blue reports everything about America to Matt and Jag. Jag wins the very first veto of the competition, or the 2 sets of competitions, or the set of competitions, and Blue wins the second veto. Since Blue is safe, Jag is debating about whether to nominate both America and Corey, meaning that he uses his veto, or just nominates one of them, and he now has to tell Blue the truth about being the secret HOH, and it should definitely put up signal alarms that he's telling her this now, after she won the veto. Corey is expecting Suri to go up to send Felicia home, though he knows the best move for Jag is to backdoor him. Jag decides to tell everyone that he is the secret HOH, since he knows that it will be exposed once the showmates are nominated, though everyone at this point already knows that he's the HOH. and mentions that the showmen are getting nominated. Jag pretty much blames Corey and America for turning him against her in his conversation to Blue, and she eats it all up. Blue takes herself off the blog, and Jag vetoes Felicia, where Corey and America are both named the replacement nominees. Corey handles the nomination well, since he was planning on targeting Jag and Matt anyways, but America is not handling it well at all, which just shows the difference between the two of them as players. Corey asks Jag about what happened, and America snaps at Jag, though she denies that she spoke to people about targeting him, and she tells him to fuck off. Corey speaks to Blue about how they need to target Matt and Jag, and are coming to terms with somewhat making amends. He continues campaigning to Suri and Felicia, but they know that it is a very tough sell, so even though she speaks to Blue, I believe Suri speaks to Blue, it isn't really likely, and none of this is really amounting to anything. Suri and Felicia do not know if Corey will make amends with Matt and Jag if he ends up staying in the house, but they don't want to anger the duo either. Corey is evicted in a unanimous 5-0 vote. In my opinion, Corey had the potential to be an upper tier character and a game player, but it just didn't really come together very well. He was likable throughout the season, and despite him being very young, he came off as more mature than his age, which is definitely a good thing in social strategic games like Big Brother and Survivor. The thing with how he played the game is that when he's active, he's very good, as he actively made bonds with several people in the house on both sides. He realized that when he was on the bottom of one alliance, he made moves that would cause him to be in a better position, whether it's flipping to the other alliance or making a new alliance in general. And he was playing very well for the first few weeks, but the issue with him is that because he's so smart, he tends to think he's the smartest person in the building and in the room. And when he got with America, I'm not blaming America at all, but once he got into the showmance, he became very, very passive and stopped paying attention to things that he should have continued paying attention to, which caused him to be outplayed by the end. At the same time, I do enjoy what he brought to the season, and he's probably one of the better players of the season. Week 12 is another crappy, boring, and mundane week in this treacherous story portion and endgame of an already lackluster season. Let's get right to it. We learned that the Final Four was made with Felicia, Suri, Jag, and Matt, since the latter two know that they can beat the others in competitions, and the former two are liking the others, sitting back while they all go after one another. Boy is somewhat doubting Matt and Jag based on what Corey was telling her, as he claims he lies about it, but he was closer to the truth than she realized. Or than he realized, or whatever. This season's just boring the F out of me. Boy Jane speaks to Jag about it, and he denies it all, though Corey was definitely right, though I don't think Corey realized how right he was. And, of course, Jag had a reason to lie to Boy Jane, but she never thinks through things that clearly. Anyways, Jag ends up winning HOH, and it's such BS that he was allowed to compete in back-to-back HOHs, despite being the invincible HOH. And what makes it even worse is that everyone already knew that he was the invincible HOH, so he literally got 2 weeks of HOH safety, which ruined the season, and something else could have happened that would have made things a bit more interesting at least, had he not been given the chance to compete in back-to-back HOHs, or whoever won the invincible HOH gotten that opportunity. Suri knows that she and Jag do not trust one another and how he is aligned with everyone in the house, though Blue thinks that she is very safe. She's still blinded on the America stuff. Matt tells Suri and Felicia that Blue will most likely be on the block next to America, since Blue will lose it if America is not on the block, and Blue will lose it if she's on the block, but Felicia picks up that he and Jag are probably aligned with Bowie Jane. Okay, here's my mistake. Bowie Jane will lose it if she is on the block, which is why Matt and Jag do not want to nominate Bowie Jane. Sorry, in my notes I wrote Blue, but I meant Bowie Jane in this instance. Ignore that error. The duo talk about how Bowie Jane does not trust them, and nominating her will cause them to lose her for good. Though there's only 7 people left. I don't know what the big deal is, and she's never been nominated. Jag tells Blue that she is going to be a pawn against America so she can stop America from winning the veto, and America knows she's in trouble. Jag nominates America and Blue for eviction. Matt and Jag tell Bowie Jane that Blue is going home, and she's ignoring everything that Corey told her. Bowie Jane is. We have a montage of Matt and Suri's relationship, and it's pretty much like a mother-son relationship, and we will see how that pans out next week. And I'm wondering if this was kind of similar to her relationship with Aris in Survivor Panama, maybe, but I think they were closer in age, and that was almost 20 years ago. Jag is not telling Felicia that Blue is going home, since he knows that she is going to spill, and Felicia doesn't really care who is going, and just shows how many people just don't really trust Felicia because of her big mouth. We have a gross montage of Felicia putting meat and other food in her pocket and remembering it, and Suri's just disgusted with it all. And you can tell that Suri didn't really care much for Felicia, especially when it was just the two of them. Suri warns Blue about Jag and how much in danger she really is without stating it outright, but Blue still trusts Jag 100%. Suri is also hinting to Felicia that Blue is in danger and to not completely trust Jag. Suri reveals that she whispered in Blue's ear that she really needs to win the veto, and Felicia thinks that they should relax, so Felicia tells Jag about what Suri is doing, and this is pretty much her throwing Suri under the bus, which is what she's been doing over the last few weeks, thinking that it will cause her to get more in good with Jag. Jag wins the veto, and he repeats to Matt what Felicia told him about Suri trying to help Blue out. Jag, of course, does not use the veto. Blue still believes that she is the pawn, and America doesn't believe that she isn't the target. Suri tells Felicia that she wants Blue to stay, and if they can't get the votes, she wants Jag to break the tie, but Felicia sees that Suri is doing her jury bidding and jury management with both Blue and Matt, and Felicia's kinda jealous of it. Felicia reports to Jag that Suri and Matt were plotting all night about taking him out. I didn't really remember if this was true or not, but she's preparing for the alternative for Jag taking her to the final two, so that is Felicia's motivation. We do get a few rewinds and flashbacks about what actually happened, where Suri told Matt that Jag has the bigger target over him, so if they were on the block together, Jag would go home, and Matt pretty much states that he knows this, and he would take Jag out at the final four. Suri ends up telling Felicia that Matt is thinking about taking Jag out, though Matt was doing this to pull Suri in closer as a potential final two. So, ultimately, Felicia isn't lying. Felicia tells Blue that she is going home, which kind of forces Matt and Jag to somewhat come clean about it, and it's a pretty emotional goodbye. Blue tells Suri that she figured out that she is Jared's mother, though I'm pretty sure Jared actually told her, and they have a really nice hug. Blue is evicted in a unanimous 4-0 vote. Blue was a very frustrating person to watch. On the show, she tended to put on her TikTok social media persona, which is just very extra, using a lot of vernacular, and was just very grating to watch. And you can tell that it was very inauthentic. But because she knew that this would be a scene that would most likely be shown on the show, and because she was in the diary room, that's how she talked, and it really made her unlikable and one of the cringiest people to watch on the season. But when she was being her natural self, meaning when she was just talking to the other house guests and living her life, she could be very likable and endearing. But that was when she wasn't trying so hard. As a player, Blue was definitely trying to be active, and I do respect that she had her own interests that she wanted to do, but she was way too naive a lot of the time. She had a horrible read on what was happening throughout a lot of the season, and she really was just extremely unaware. So it'll be interesting to see where I rank her on the game player tier rankings, but in general, I don't really think the highest of her as a game player or a personality, though she seems like a fine enough person. It is the double eviction, and Bowie Jane wins HOH and nominates Felicia and America for eviction. Matt wins the veto, where essentially it was the same competition that caused him to win his first veto, so Lacey production design there, and of course he doesn't use the veto. America gives a good fight and campaign, but it doesn't stop anything, and America is evicted in a unanimous 3-0 vote. You could tell that America really wanted to be the badass, fan favorite, attractive, super fan throughout the season that just dominated the game, but it never really panned out for her. She was at the bottom of the Riley side of their house and was essentially added in as a number where they never really trusted her, and she didn't really have any sort of relationship with the other side of the house where she could have been a floater or protected on both sides. She was kind of just left alone because people really didn't seem threatened by her, and because she was attached to Corey. And while she did have the Izzy flip, she still needed Corey to pull off the move. In general, a lot of people just didn't trust her. She ran her mouth way too much, and she wasn't really respected. As a personality, I think she could have been iconic and could have been great, as she definitely had some sort of fieriness and passion, but I also think that her showmance with Corey kind of diluted her at several points throughout this season, so she didn't bring out the best that she could have. So overall, I'm above thinking that she's meh, and I think she's decent as a character, though as a player, we'll get there when the time comes. What I've said for like the last 3 to 5 weeks applies for week 13 as well. And they've started to drag out the end game rounds like they did in the last 3 seasons, and it really sucks here. So Matt wins HOH, and he tells Suri that she is never going up if he wins, and this doesn't age well. And they, as well as Jeg, mention that Felicia has to go next. We learn that Matt denied to Jeg that he mentioned targeting Jeg, though he is very aware that he did say it. Matt tells Suri that Felicia told Jeg about Matt potentially targeting Jeg, and she tries to clear the air where Suri spins it in a way about Felicia saying Matt told her this a month ago, which Matt ends up believing, or that's how the edit portrayed it. Matt tells Suri that he's going to nominate Boy Jane and Felicia, where Felicia knows that she's going on the block, but wants Suri's help to get Boy Jane on the block. Jag and Boy Jane tell Matt that Felicia needs to go, and they have to speak to Suri about going on the block. Felicia calls out Jag for their final four being broken, as she knows that Boy Jane is working with him and Matt, while also mentioning that Suri should be the pawn over herself. Matt got a letter from Riley, and a lot of people allege that this partially changed things for him. And it's funny about him talking about dating her after the season, where it never happens, and it might have been up to him, so some are claiming that Riley was trying to use him for clout. And they're not even on speaking terms now, if I remember correctly. Matt pretty much tells Suri that she's going up, and she feels some sort of way, since she protected him long before he ever aligned with Boy Jane. Suri campaigns for Jag to go on the block, since there won't be another chance to get him out, but it's all for moot. Matt nominates Suri and Felicia for eviction. Suri feels very hurt about the nominations and feels very betrayed, and she doesn't really know what to do, as she knows that she's been close in some of these later competitions, but she doesn't feel like she's the pawn here. Matt wants Felicia to go at this point, since Suri will protect him, and Jag has intentions to get Suri out, since she is the better player. Matt gives a bad excuse to Felicia about why she's on the block instead of Boy Jane, and the final three call themselves the Mafia, which, ugh, no one cares about. They end up hiding the wine from Suri and Felicia, and they got really nasty this week, with their rants isolating the other women, and it's just really pathetic. And it makes them look bad that they felt the need to do this to two older women who weren't physical threats, and they had all this mouth behind their backs, but they couldn't say this to their faces. And it was really unneeded, and they all tried to paint themselves as these heroes who were robbed and who were bullied, and it's just really ridiculous. Suri is getting tired of Felicia and her toenail clipping on her bed, and Jag is thinking about wanting to take Boy Jane to the end, since she'll be an easier person to beat. Boy Jane and Jag plot on how to get Matt to want to boot Suri, since they know that she will keep Matt over one of them if they were on the block, and Felicia is tied to no one. Jag wins the veto, and of course he has no reason to use it. Matt tells Suri that he refuses to let anything happen to her, but Suri knows that it is out of his hands at this point, since he doesn't vote. Jag pretty much hints to Suri that it is over for her, despite there being 10 days left of the season, though she is playing nice. Jag, of course, does not use the veto. Jag is able to convince Matt that it's fine for Suri to go, though Jag knows that it is not in Matt's best interest, mentioning that Suri has probably thrown competitions, and Boy Jane mentions that Suri has made it far in Survivor many different times, in many different seasons. Suri makes her pitch to Boy Jane, even despite their issues that started with the red vote, but Boy Jane really is not buying it. Suri knows that she is a goner since the energy is different compared to when she was nominated against Cameron a few weeks ago. Jag makes a comment about being an Olympian, and Felicia sees this as Jag insulting Matt, and he's been spending more time with Boy Jane. Matt has no idea what Felicia is talking about when she mentions this, and she's doing this so Matt can take her to the final two. Or this is what she's trying to do. Jag senses that something is bothering Matt, and Matt tells him that he was told that Boy Jane and Jag were making fun of him, and he sees this as bullshit. Jag is pissed off that Felicia is twisting some personal stuff that came out of nowhere, and they end up ranting about this to Boy Jane, where they think Felicia is using his disability to her advantage, so Matt is thinking about voting her out, though nothing comes out of this. Suri is evicted in a unanimous 2-0 vote. Suri was positioned in a way where she could have been the Jesse or the Paul of the season, and from how the first several weeks of the season was set up, it felt like that was going to be her trajectory. But luckily, or unluckily for her son Jared was just too messy of a player for her structure to remain intact. Though I definitely do think that she wasn't the best strategically, as she was very scatterbrained throughout the early weeks, and because she was so used to how fast-paced things were in Survivor, she thought that that could be attributed to Big Brother. But that wasn't the place, or that wasn't the case. Here, Suri did end up adjusting her gameplay, and it really shows that she could play while on the top and on the bottom as well, which is a very rare trait. And I felt like she was more entertaining on Big Brother than she was in Survivor, as I felt like she let loose a lot more. She showed more of her personality, and she had a wide range of emotions, which we usually don't really get from Suri on Survivor. So I definitely do appreciate her contribution towards the season, and she was easily or arguably the standout of the season overall. Just continues to show how good she is, not only as a game player, but as a personality on the social, strategic reality shows, which we've seen 4 times on Survivor, on The Traitors, and now on Big Brother. And this could be the great ending that Suri wanted pertaining her reality TV career. I really didn't care about the finale week or how the season ended, since I felt like the season was a chore to watch for a plethora of reasons, and I only enjoyed a few weeks of it. But it's no shocker that the person who was evicted very early on in the season, 10-0, ended up winning the season. But whatever, let's just get through this week. Boy Jane wins HOH, and based on a game that Boy Jane and Jag pre-planned, they were able to get Matt comfortable enough to go on the block, breaking his streak of never being nominated. Boy Jane nominates Matt and Felicia for eviction. Jag wins the final veto of the season, and he has to decide whether to evict Matt or Felicia. Felicia speaks to Jag about how Matt is the hardest person to beat, which many people in the house stated, and apparently Jag was considering booting Matt, but his mind changed after allegedly being in the diary room, and he wanted to stand by his principles, or his people's principles. Jag votes to evict Felicia. Outside of some moments throughout the season where she slut-shamed people like Kristen very early on, Felicia was a joy to watch. She was such a unique casting choice where we rarely see older women on the show, but we rarely see older black women on this show as well, and she really brought a new perspective to the game, not only from a gameplay point of view, but from a personality point of view. She was very fearless, she stated what was on her mind, she didn't hold back, and she really did play the game aggressively, even though she wasn't good at it all the time. There is really no one in Big Brother history who is like Felicia, and that is a very good thing, based on a show that thrives on casting stereotypes and archetypes, and they are there are people who felt the same slot every single season, even though they're completely different people. Felicia definitely brought the drama, she brought the humor, she brought the wittiness, and she brought the personality that the season really, really needed. So she, arguably outside of Suri, was definitely the star of the season, no matter who actually won it or made it to the very end. Matt and Jag decide to play rock, paper, scissors to decide who wins part 1, which is honestly very pathetic, and it ends up with Matt winning part 1 of the final HOH. Jag wins part 2 of the final HOH comp, and Jag wins the final HOH overall, where he chooses to evict Boy Jane, despite knowing that it will be easier for him to beat her at the end instead of Matt, but because he wants to be the hitman, that's why he made the choice. Though it could have been a game-losing decision. Bowie Jane is a weird person to talk about. She actively decided to not strategize or to talk game with people for the first several weeks of the season, which was one of the reasons why her allies started distrusting her very early on, and why people outside of the alliance didn't know what to do with her because she was so unreadable. But things did turn around for her once the red flip happened, and she realized that she was at not only at the bottom of her alliance, but she wasn't at her alliance at all. So she found new allies to work with, which a lot of people in her position don't do. After that, though, she kind of just played for Jag and Matt to get to the end, and she didn't care about winning, which I really didn't like. As a personality, she really didn't offer much, despite her being a loyal by day and DJ by night, and her having a youthful spirit despite being middle aged. She really didn't give much personality throughout the season, and she definitely wasn't strategic. She wasn't even on the episodes or the edit until the last few weeks of the season, and this is despite or in spite of her winning 3 HOHs throughout the season. She's definitely an arguable dud. Suri asks Matt about the perception that he was following Jag and asked what moves did he make that was his own and not directed by Jag, and he responds that he played in the power competition to save Jag when he was evicted, and also claiming that the double evictions were a team decision and they did everything together. So essentially, Matt didn't answer the question. Corey asks Jag about the dynamics of the duo and did he carry Matt to the final two, where Jag mentions that he paved their path to the final two, plan after plan and competition after competition, by himself, and he did lead, but Matt did save him in week 4, but he led all the other weeks after that. Felicia asks Matt about him considering to evict Jag and whether it was the truth or a lie, and Matt responds that he was never going to do that, so he essentially lied to her. Though he said it to Suri, apparently. But either way, he lied about it. America asks Jag about his goodbye messages, giving credit and being honest, but he didn't do it in the house, which the jury saw was cowardly, so they're essentially questioning his jury management. And he responds that he wasn't going to say anything before the eviction, since things were not certain, though most evictions are certain well before they happen, so that's kind of a cop-out. And he would use his goodbye messages to be honest because that is when things are certain, though technically those are also recorded before the eviction happened and when he owned his moves. I'm kind of on that answer, but whatever. Cameron asks Matt about a specific example where he strategically lied to someone and how did it benefit his game, and Matt responds telling people that he would take a shot at Jag and told people what they wanted to hear all the time, but tried his best to be loyal, but didn't make things up. Matt was very nervous and kept on stumbling over his answers or ending it early, so either he was coming up with things on the spot or he was aware that he didn't really do a whole lot. Blue asks Jag about being voted out unanimously in week 4 and why he deserves to win over the person who saved him, and Jag responds that since then he has worked hard to adapt to his game, and Matt saving him was a testament to his, meaning Jag's, social game. Jag then rambles about mapping all the relationships and ensuring every week that his target went home, and his entire game is a testament to that. Bowie Jane asks Jag about how his game changed when joining the Mafia, which is so pathetic, no one really cares about that. And he responds that he was trying to find a loyal team, and they were all loyal, so they had to make a lot of big moves and protect one another. Matt's final speech is about being the first deaf person in Big Brother, so he had no template. He played a social and competitive game, mentions living in the have-not room to make connections with people. He wasn't nominated until the final 4. He had to throw competitions because people knew he was a physical threat just by looking at him. He won the power where he only told Suri and Jag, won 2 vetoes at the double, and then backed away due to his social game at times. He starts mumbling and stuttering throughout the speech and mentions that he is a team player. Jag's final speech is about how he willed himself to be at the end and everyone in the jury to be there because he signed their eviction notices, and he convinced Boy Jane to boot Cameron, single-handedly sent Corey and Blue home. It was his plan to send America home, and he convinced Matt to send Suri home because she was closer to Matt, and he single-handedly sent home Felicia and Boy Jane. He is the most dominant, masterful, and strategic player in the house, and is the first Sikh player in the house, and he should be the first Sikh winner. Jag wins the season in a 5-2 vote. Alrighty, so where do I start? I definitely do not think Big Brother was equipped to handle having a deaf person in the house, pertaining how they set up the competitions and the production equipment, since he did struggle with a lot of those early competitions, since they didn't accommodate for him well enough. Matt seemed like the sweet, affable guy, and I do think he has a lot of the social skills that would cause him to do well in general, and I do think he's strategic enough in the choices that he made, but at the same time, he didn't really know how to explain his game, and it also shows that maybe he wasn't really aware of all the things that he was doing, or he didn't think about it methodically. At the same time, he kind of did have a certain mentality that was bordering on sexist at times with some of his commentary, and I was never really entertained by him throughout the season. I definitely think he's a solid enough player, and as a personality, he didn't really offer much to the season. So overall, I'm kind of just meh on him. So I give Jag props on being the first person of South Asian descent to win Big Brother, and it continued the trend of there being more people of color or non-white people winning Big Brother, as there hasn't been a white person that has won since Cody in Big Brother All Stars 2. But at the same time, Jag's game was bad. I already explained part one, but even when he came back, he was definitely blind to a lot of what was happening throughout the first 2 weeks back, and the flip really had nothing to do with him, but it put him in a good position because Corey and America were very passive, and he was able to pull in Boy Jane through the help of Matt, and they weaponized Cameron. After that, Jag mainly just won competition after competition after competition after competition. And my issue with him is that he tended to victimize himself, and he felt the need to villainize everyone else while they're on their way out the door. So there was a sanctimonious element to him that I didn't like. At the same time, I didn't really find him entertaining, though I found his perspective on things pretty interesting due to him being different. So that is my review of Big Brother 25. Obviously, they made the season this long because of the strike, and they needed content for TV, where the past 2 seasons before this were shorter than the normal seasons over the last 10 years. And hopefully, they go back to the shorter seasons with BB26 in the future, since the season really did not have the meat and potatoes and the yams and all of that to warrant the 100-day length. I really found a lot of the production decisions to be abhorrent, like letting the invisible HOH be eligible to play in the next HOH, dragging the pre-jury out to 9 weeks, making the pre-jury about 66 to 67% of the season, which is just utterly ridiculous, causing the jury portion to be very rushed, doing a double eviction, and then not only bringing the people in the double eviction back into the game, but also not having an elimination round, a veto competition, or an HOH competition in the week afterwards. And I'm pretty sure there's so many other things that I'm missing out on pertaining the dumb twists and the production choices that they decided to do in the season. The gameplay was kind of interesting at around the second third of the season, but I found the beginning of the season to be very boring, and I found the ending of the season to be bordering on treacherous. So there's really only a few good weeks in the season, and that off feeling that I felt about Big Brother 25 from the moment it started live carried on throughout the rewatch and up to this present point where I'm recording this and analyzing things after rewatching it. The cast wasn't the worst, and I could see why most of them were cast, but some of them definitely did not deliver whatsoever, or they were underwhelming. And I felt like they didn't mesh in the best way possible. There are definitely some shining stars. There are definitely some likable people, but there are definitely some duds and other people who were grating and weren't even entertaining. But a part of me felt like this was also the fault of the boot order, where a lot of the more boring people lasted longer in the season, where a lot of the more interesting people, or the people who could have spiced things up, ended up going home earlier than what would have been best for the season. But that's how the cookie crumbles at times. It's weird because I'm very mixed on this new era of Big Brother, which I believe starts with Big Brother 23. And while I'm glad that we have all of the diversity that is needed, I do think that it brings up some uncomfortable elements of race and ethnicity that's kind of uncomfortable, as there's always the quote unquote standard person of this ethnicity or this race or whatever who feels like they have to be the best version of themselves possible, which to me means like they feel like they have to be politically correct, or they have to be the most palatable to whiter, whatever. It's interchangeable to me, audiences. Overall, the season was just a miss, in my opinion, despite there being a few good moments. And it's definitely one of the weaker seasons, where it's not a season that I feel like I could rewatch. And there's a lot of cheap humor that the producers kept on forcing in the episodes, whether it's through the competitions, the side effects, or the sound effects. It was just very uncomfortable to watch. I didn't really find the gameplay that interesting for the most part. The cast was too large and it was too all over the place. And it honestly kind of seems like a randomizer season, which isn't really good. So overall, I completed my rewatch of not only Big Brother US, but Big Brother Canada, which took an entire year. I'm actually glad that I was able to finish it. And I'm definitely looking forward to not only doing the game player tier ranking for this cast, but I'm looking forward to ranking all of the Big Brother US house guests by their gameplay, and then ranking all the Big Brother US seasons. And I'm starting to do that with Canada now, since Big Brother Canada 12 is about to air. So expect videos on me ranking the seasons and ranking every Big Brother Canada player that I've covered for the most part. So that should be out soon. I'm definitely looking more forward to making more videos that isn't dedicated to Big Brother or even reality TV in general. I'm thinking about doing more commentary about sexuality and Big Brother. That should be coming out soon, and hopefully I should get around to making the Big Brother US Where Are They Now videos, which I've done research on and I've started recording, but it's just a long process, and something else is always coming up. So anyways, you can follow me on my Twitter at lala_Annie. Thank you all for supporting me on this journey, and I'll definitely be back soon. I'm also going to continue making Big Brother 20 compilation videos, so expect more of those videos out in the next few days and weeks. Thank you all, and take care.